Hey, this is going to be a quick tutorial on how to use OSC in geopix. So the actual source of your OSC is entirely up to you. For this demo, I'm going to be using a new separate instance of Touch Designer on the same computer running locally to kind of simulate 3 channels of OSC. Now, if you are using something more common like Touch OSC, which is on your phone or tablet, or anything else like that, definitely, if you run into issues with communication, make sure you can receive that phone's OSC using some kind of other application like an OSC monitoring tool. Because sometimes your issues are going to be on the sending side, not the receiving side. Specifically with Touch OSC, I have seen issues where if you have your cell phone internet enabled and you also are connected to the Wi-Fi that you want to be sending OSC on, sometimes that will just prevent communications from going to the right place. If you have multiple networks on a phone, this also happens on PCs sometimes. So if you do run into this issue, try temporarily disabling your LTE or cell phone internet and see if that helps the problem. But anyways, to troubleshoot, I highly recommend attempting to receive things in some kind of a simple monitoring app so you can verify that it works before getting into troubleshooting why geopix may not be receiving it. All right, with that out of the way, let's jump into geopix. So we have an empty scene file here and we just need something basic to test with. So I'm going to create a fixture, going to go into hull mode and going to go into add mode, which is right here. I'm just going to add a single hull and it's selected. So go to hull, generate from selection, and we have a generator and a simple grid. We don't need anything crazy here. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see some stuff. Great, so we have a grid. So let's go ahead and select our fixture and we'll go up to create and projector. And so this will give us something to project content with. I'm just going to scale it up a little bit and hide it. We'll just test it to make sure it works. We see red, green, blue, excellent. So from here, let's go ahead and set up some other stuff that we can eventually connect our OSC signals to. So let's go to the I/O tab and let's create a macro and let's go ahead and connect this to our projector and let's click play. So over here we can see that we do have action on our fixture. Great. And let's go ahead and set up a few other things. In the perform tab here, we will create a viz widget so we can see what we're dealing with. Let's go ahead and turn this on. Great, it's looking good. We'll go back over here to edit mode and create a vertical slider. So let's just go ahead and duplicate this a couple times. So we have 3, red, green, blue. That's what we're going to do here. So we'll call this V red, V green, and V blue. Now the reason I'm creating these sliders here is so you can see 2 different use cases for how you might leverage the OSC in Touch Designer or geopix. So one is you can drive obviously widgets here in the perform panel, which is a lot of times what you'll want to do, but you may want to control, maybe you have a lot of OSC channels and some of your macros need to leverage those OSC channels for very specific use cases. And in that case, you can also drive nodes directly with that. And I'll show you how in just a second. All right, so let's go ahead and just give ourselves some starting values here, and we'll come back to this window in a little bit. Let's go ahead and zoom in here. So our perform viz has a slightly more zoomed in look. Okay, so back to I/O. We need to create a few more things. Let's go into the macro we just created and let's go ahead and edit this ramp and let's just set it to random grayscale. Doesn't matter, just something that doesn't have color. Then let's add a constant. And you'll notice the constant, you can set the color here if you want, but we're actually going to be driving these with inputs. So these are green inputs, meaning they are channel inputs, aka single value inputs. We're going to connect our OSC to this here in a little bit. Let's do a few more things here. Let's go ahead and set up a composite. And we're going to connect these two and set this to multiply. So this constant will be a multiplicative color operation here against our ramp. So we'll just plug this into text out, and let's just kind of give ourselves some more room here. Okay, great. So we're ready for the OSC. If you go up to File Preferences and hop over to the Channel In section, what you'll see if you're starting geopix for the first time is probably something like this. You have 8 different banks that you can choose to route information in. So if you have OSC coming from your phone and OSC coming from Touch Designer and OSC coming from another computer on your network, you could have each of those come in through a separate bank. But we're just using one input, so we're just going to use number 1. Switch your protocol to OSC and just turn it on. I made some changes very recently that if you're watching this video and you have the latest geopix, you will have these changes. The local address is now by default blank. And you might run into issues where you need to actually select the network adapter that the traffic is flowing over. But in a lot of cases, blank will just work out of the box. Now we're using an input port of 10,000, which going back over here, that is just the default for Touch Designer. So if you are using Touch and the defaults, you should have immediate, basically functioning access here. Now I'm using a network port here. I'm specifying the actual IP address of this computer. Wildcard will sometimes work. In this case, it does not for the receiving end. Let's see if blank works. Blank also does not work. So you really do need to specify the IP address, even if it is the same machine. I'm specifying local address here too, but I think, okay, wildcard does not work, but blank works. Things are a little bit weird in Touch. You may not have this weirdness if you are driving things from like Touch OSC, but on the sending end, when in doubt, specify the same adapter, specify your target, and if you are on the same computer, make sure to use the same thing for your local address. Anyways, as you can see, we've got things set up and running, and we should have our little log area showing the inputs. So this basically just updates and redraws this table every time a signal is received. So since we're getting stuff every frame, it's changing quite a bit. But this is good. This is doing what we want. Let's turn this off for a moment so we can just look at our data here. So we have 3 channels, red, green, and blue. And over here in Touch, I've got a simple ramp, a step ramp, and an oscillator, just doing a sine wave. There's 3 different things that we can connect to whatever we want. So how do we utilize these in I/O? It's actually pretty simple. This is a global data source. It's best to think of it that way. It's available in geopix to anything that can have access to it, that wants access to it. And since we're in a macro, we need to select this into the macro. So the way we do that is we create a channel and then a capture and a channel capture. Channel capture is kind of a generic capture for any kind of channel. Right now we're using OSC, but if you're using MIDI or ArtNet or streaming ACNN, it would be the same exact thing. So we'll drop a channel capture, and you'll notice that it's a fairly simple node. It's ASCII. It has an auto learn. This basically will grab the latest channel to change. We're not going to use that because all of our channels are changing all the time, so it's not going to probably work right. But I'll show you how that works a little bit later with the Perform UI. Channel selector is a string. We just need to copy and paste some text, and then remap style. You'll want to play around with this, but raw a lot of times is a good place to start. It's a one-to-one mapping. So depending on if you're using a normalized value or a non-normalized value, and depending on what you're plugging it into, that matters. For stuff in the I/O tab, generally it's normalized. So just keep that in mind. Okay, we'll call this cap underscore red. And we'll go ahead and take our label. This is the ID identifier, and we'll just paste this here into channel selector. And you'll notice that now we have a value, 0.383, which matches the readout for this value. Now, again, we have active off, which is why these aren't changing. We're going to turn it back on here in just a moment. So I'll hit Control D, duplicate this twice, and we'll name this to cap green, cap blue. Now, it doesn't matter what you name these. This is just for your own sanity. What matters is that you select the right channel. Okay, so we've got these in here. Let's make sure everything is configured correctly. Green. So we should have a different value in each of these. Yeah, we do. All right, so we're ready to turn this back on. So we still have our values moving, but now we can see them also moving in these nodes. The blue squiggly means this is a stream. It is not something with a defined start and end. It's going to go forever. And then this gray bar is the value. It's just a visual indication of like what that number is from 0 to 1. If you're above 1 or below 1 or 0, above 1 or below 0, this gray bar will just kind of be clamped to the width of the node. So now we can, hover over here and we can see the outputs of these nodes. You also have a nice little output here. And now we can simply plug these in to any other matching connector. And there we go. We have these 3 channels driving these 3 inputs, and we're multiplying that. And if we hop over here to perform, voila, we have, not a very great piece of content, but a very, very simple demonstration of like how that works. So let's get into the next one. So I'm going to move these over here, and we're just going to disconnect these. And yeah, let's go ahead and turn off the viewers. So let's try widget capture. So this is a little bit different. We can turn auto learn on, and since we haven't moved any of these yet, we'll just grab red. We'll just move it. And you'll see that we've now captured the red slider. And you can middle mouse drag to, it's kind of janky, but you can kind of test move that slider in the IO tab. But obviously you want to eventually be moving it here where performance is much better. So we'll connect that to the red channel, and then we'll we'll turn auto learn on, and we'll grab the green, and then we'll turn auto learn on for this, and we'll grab the blue. And so we'll plug these in here. You can name them if you want. I'm not going to because we've already been through that. And now we have, essentially perform controls. We've gone over this in other videos, so I'm not going to dwell on this too much. The main thing that I want to show you is that you can get these mapped to OSC. So we have our channels over here, and again, this is a somewhat complicated tool to use, but the simplest way is to right-click and drive. We can use exact value. And of course, it picked up, the first thing that moved, which in our case worked out, but it won't always work out because it depends what you have moving. You typically would want OSC channels that are not moving, and you want to just move the value that you want to map to it. So we're just going to go and do this for all of them. We'll do exact value, exact value. Now they're all mapped to things. They're not all correctly mapped, so we need to go in here and modify it. So V red, V green, V blue. You'll notice that the expression editor shows a name, and it's the same in all. So we just need to modify these to be green and blue. Now, if you weren't using Touch Designer like I was, and you could just basically move this slider, then move this slider, you wouldn't have to go through this modification step. You could just map them one to one at a time. And yeah, there you go. You have sliders that are now mapped to OSC, and hopping back over here, you'll see that they are moving and grooving and doing their thing and piping into the constant. So that's 2 ways that you can use OSC in the geopix UI. So I hope that was helpful. Thanks.